Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the AGE Open here in Lawndale, Redondo Beach.
Yep, that's the new location here at Collectors Legion.
Absolutely.
Yep. It's great being here. It's great seeing you, man.
Yeah,
Glad you
dude.
make it out.
Been a minute.
Definitely. We have some great games here. I don't know if you've seen the meta breakdown. Meta breakdown is gonna be. It is available. Cool, perfect.
Let's go bottom left.
Yep, meta breakdown.
Blammo.
Awesome. We got 5 Azalea, 5 Oldhim, 4 Dromai, 3 Bravo, 2 Lexi, 2 Katsu, 2 Kano, 2 Briar, 2 Urzi, 1 Dash, Reinhardt, Viscerai, 5. We haven't seen in a bit. Dorinthia and Levia. We have a huge spread here.
Yeah, interestingly, when we looked at the last breakdown for the AGE back in March, it was Katsu reigned supreme. It was, these cards were still fairly fresh on the market and in the metagame, but we're seeing somewhat of the expected numbers today when you look at the breakdown across.
Yep.
People are talking about Azalea. People are talking a lot about Oldhim, and by God are people talking about Dromai.
No, definitely. Dromai seems to be, I think, the crowd favorite. Everyone's rooting for Dromai to go up and get those top placements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the discourse that is being thrown back and forth across the internet and kitchen tables about
definitely.
the draconic illusionist hero is varied, sometimes measured, and often in some ways combative. But we've got a game for you that it features neither of those heroes. We've got Lexi and we've got Briar coming up for you in just a moment. So let's go ahead and take a look at the intro to that game, because we have two very established, very exciting players coming up. We have Chris Iaali of World Championship fame on the hero that he piloted at that event in Briar, Warden of Thorns, versus Zayne Johnson on Lexi Livewire.
SD Golden Child Zayne, definitely one of our, I think, well thought out players. This is his first card game he's ever played, and has have consistent pro tour. He's gone to Lily. He's going to Baltimore. So two really, I think, well seasoned and disciplined players.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a little bit of a San Diego versus Los Angeles feature match for you today, a cage match, as it were.
Yep.
Taking a look here, though, I was talking to Chris about his pick today. We've seen him at the AGE piloting Lexi. He had that incredible game against Craig, and I think the very first one that we had back in January, where it was going all the way down to the bottom of the deck, and you just saw Chris block until he came in for his 1,000,000 damage at the end of that game. So he's been testing the deck that he's facing against extensively over these last couple months, but decided to bring Briar today. I talked to him a little bit. He's definitely was anticipating the lack of Icelander, which he was absolutely rewarded for. I mean, looking at the breakdown, we didn't see a single one of the Ice Wizard in the room today, but he wanted to see how it was. He told me he was not that interested in playing Oldhim, and he was curious about the matchup into the Rangers. He said a lot of his teammates were saying, how bad it was, and he wanted to see it for himself, and by gosh, he's gotten his wish in round 2.
Yep, this is the place to do it as well. You're going to be playing against really great players. The average elo in this room is massive. So testing these theories before going to Pro Tour coming up is definitely, I think, what's on everyone's minds here. Zayne most likely probably going to be bringing Lexi to Pro Tour. Chris, just seeing what's out there, what his options are. Chris is the type of person who's very flexible and very skilled and can go into what he thinks is going to be the best deck to get him that finish.
Yeah, the tournaments over this weekend, every piece of data that people can acquire before the Pro Tour, I think people are really staring at these tournaments. They're going to be looking at the battle-hardened results. They're going to be looking at these results. They really are going to want to see what is the breakdown of the meta, how do the decks actually compete into each other, because people are doing their testing, they're doing their talking, but at the end of the day, it's different when you sit down in a tournament. You can't plan for some of the variables and just some of the magic of actual play. But
especially a turn 1 red Icy Incarnate, right? That's the
Arctic Incarceration.
Arctic Incarceration. That's going to give 3 Frostbites to Chris, and Zayne's going to be able to load arrows and pass back. Chris not having a strong slap back as Briar. Briar hates Frostbites.
Yeah, you got, Briar, they can often operate without the blue card in their hand, but they do like to use it for some of those big Channel Man Heroics and others when they do have it. Critically also, Zayne, by just throwing out the Arctic Incarceration, not allowing Chris to filter his hand at all, and that is going to end up, I think that's just the Infectious Host,
Infectious
right?
Host red. So it's 0 for 4. He doesn't have any ailments or any diseases, so it's just vanilla, but
hopefully not.
Hopefully not. But Briar loves 0 for 4s. That's the deck that she has a previous version of her called Cheerios Briar, where it's just 0 cost red for 4. So I can see why he would think this is a deck, and probably pretty good against those new outsider heroes.
Yeah, and so Chris, critically, like you talked about there, because of those 3 Frostbites, having to spend all 3 of the other red cards in his hand just to send 4 damage, he's not going to have an Arsenal after this turn, and he's going to have to face down whatever comes after or before the drill shot that he can already see sitting in Zayne's Arsenal. So
Beautiful dice.
look at those dice.
Look at those dice.
Shout out to the YouTube channel 3 Floating
for
providing those dice.
Guys.
Thank you to Legend Story Studios for providing them. And
appreciate it. Making us look more professional.
So
it's drill shot red. Chris is going to have an embodiment, so that's going to block for 4.
Absolutely, yeah. The 4 breakpoint of these drill shots is part of why they can be so effective, because you either have to commit 2 cards or you're going to lose the block on your equipment anyway. But the embodiment of Earth there providing all that value that we're used to seeing out of Briar. And we've got a signed Remorseless coming in.
Beautiful. Look at the purple on that. I just love the art in this game. It's so amazing. Yeah. Unfortunately, the art does not save how much it's going to hurt. 5 damage with an on-hit. Chris laughing. All right, I'll take it. I'll keep my 3 cards. Let's see how he deals with this. Not giving up any armor early. Waiting for that turn where he's going to get that CMH or get that power play and be able to swing tempos when he really wants to use that armor.
And you're going to want, it's going to be critical to watch here how Chris elects to handle the on-hits, because the damaging on-hits, you have to imagine he's less interested in blocking versus the on-hits that actually tax his turn, or in this case, tax his equipment block. And we see 2 blue 3 blocks that, because of that embodiment of Earth, are going to go ahead and clean up those 4 attack breakpoint cards with just a single card. So that last turn when we saw the Infectious Host, it ended up doing a little more work than perhaps we thought, because it did allow him to get that embodiment, which turned on those blocks for his next turn.
Correct. No, that is definitely huge, especially in this matchup. You want to be blocking efficiently, and you got to be aggressive. Speaking of aggressive, Chris putting down a Humble, brand new card out of Outsiders, so great, and super good tech against Lexi.
This is sick, because this Humble here, if it hits, it's going to turn off Lexi's basically text. She's going to be textless. She'll have no hero ability, and you think to yourself, okay, so I can't give a Frostbite, I can't give an attack go again, but you can't turn the card face up with Lexi's ability. So you have to, the only other way to clear that arsenal would be to play it. And if that attack doesn't have go again, you have to ask yourself, is Zayne wanting to commit his Snapdragon Scalers this early to give the attack go again? So this is a really cool little play here. For my little play, I mean big 6 attack from Chris Iaali.
6. Yep.
Yeah, I actually saw, I was looking around at the round 1, I saw a Rhinar throw out a Humble. You know, this card is actually I didn't expect to see it kind of ubiquitous throughout these heroes, but I mean, look at that. It's going to take 2-3 blocks from Zayne. That's a really powerful on hit.
On the Tunic turn, he's going to flip for Frailty. Thankfully, had a Frailty there. As we're seeing, first time, at least for me, a Blood Rot Codex from Lexi. This is going to put a card face down from his hand in his arsenal and give Chris a Blood Rot as well, and give Zayne a Ponder. Super huge, throwing Endless Arrow out. Let's see how Chris responds.
So, yeah, that we got to wonder, does he have another Infectious Host? Because he might end this turn with both a Blood Rot and a Frailty, and it would be nice to play a 0 for 4 that just pops those afflictions back over to the other side. But
Chris is on another level, knowing Infectious Host is going to be a good generic in this meta, especially if you're an aggro deck that you should be looking into, because of all these oppressive decks like Lexi and Assassins that are going to give you these new diseases or new tokens.
Now, here's an interesting decision. As this red Endless Arrow comes in for Zayne here, it's going to be coming in for 4, right? If you block it, you don't want it to go back to your hand, but that Codex of Frailty right there, that might just pop it on back into the arsenal, and you're going to be faced with the exact same problem again. So Chris here is going to go ahead and elect to block the 4. It is going to go to the graveyard. Let's see if Zayne wants to go ahead and cash in his Codex right away.
Did not have go again, so he did not do the Snapdragons. He says, okay, you get that Endless Arrow. I have 2 more. I got a Snatch out of your hand and some armor. So I think he's kind of happy there with that. Chris Iaali is going to have to, once again, keep the aggression up. A CNC, super good against Lexi's.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, another thing that I was listening to the Manor podcast, and they were talking about how Fuseless Lexi, they have more 3 blocks. That's something that Chris really liked, and he was telling me about in his Lexi list, is the 3 blocks are much easier to come by when you're not having to run the ice cards. But these codexes block for 2, a lot of the ice cards block for 2, so depending on how Zayne has built his deck here, it might be harder to come by those 3 blocks to block something like a Humble, to block something like a Command and Conquer. So he has a at least one card in his hand, one floating in his tunic resource after this. So you have to imagine this isn't going to have go again, and we'll see if Chris wants to pay for the blood rot if he can, or take 2 more damage at the end of the turn.
That's also a good point, is that Chris not having creepers is choosing to use snapdragons. Necessarily, it's a preference, but sometimes creepers against Lexi can provide an extra 1 block and maybe an instant Tome of Fender or something. But obviously, with the snapdragons pick, being more aggressive is what he has in mind instead of being more defensive. So it's going to be a good game so far. Blocking 2 cards, the CNC. Zayne wants to keep his arsenal.
And Chris electing to pay for the blood rot there with the blue. So he is prioritizing life, even though the Snapdragon Scalers point to that offensive
I don't think I've ever
game
paid for a blood rot. I was like, I'll take this too.
Yeah. So the Arsenal card there for Zayne, coming out first, one of the new cards from Outsiders, a Falcon Wing, is going to allow him to continue his turn, because even though he didn't load it with Voltaire, this card just has go again. So here's a 0 for 3 with go again, 2 cards in hand, Tunic online. Zayne at 36, Chris at 34 here. Let's see how he wants to respond.
This card, too, was originally a little slept on during the preview season and even earlier in the testing. But once people discovered, oh, this is just an error with Go again, they loved it. You can buff it with Rain Razors. You can buff it with Voltaire. So if you're a Ranger main out there, try this card. It's super great. Has Go again.
Zayne then, he's going to cash in his Tunic, load with Voltaire, and put a Searing Shot into his arsenal, and then out there on into the arena with go again. So this is a 0 for 4, but if it hits, it's basically a 0 for 5. He will take an additional point of damage. Chris took the Falcon Wing, going down to 31, and let's see if he wants to commit any further blocks to the Searing Shot.
Just vanilla. I think I'd let Falcon Wing if I didn't have an optimal block hit, but the Searing Shot is a hard one because 0 for 5 is super efficient.
Yeah.
And Chris is already at 31. He doesn't want to lose too much health this early unless he has CMH hand, I think. So he says, I'll take it. I'm going to go 0 for 5.
And you have to imagine
that
there's that second red Arctic Incarceration. Going to go ahead and give 3 more Frostbites, allowing Zayne to sit on that Codex of Frailty. This is like, dude, I don't want a single Frostbite.
This is the Briar experience against Lexi. Being buried underneath the snow makes it so your hand that you're trying to trade out, it's just now just useless because you can't get through that ice.
Yeah, and as a chain ender as well, you got some damage in. You were able to throw meaningful cards that could have required blocks, but then if the opponent decides to not, you have something they have to respect.
Yeah.
Frostbites are you can't choose to not pay.
Look at Chris here on his thinking process. You can see.
Yeah, there's a deep breath from our
guy. Man, this is I think what most Briars deal with on daily with ice, and that's why you don't see them as often. Chris, I think, coming to a conclusion about Briar now, not probably going to see a whole lot of them if Ace-Landers still exists in the meta, and, of course, Lexi. Still having available to ice is making it very hard to do anything.
Yeah, we're going to see how he wants to do this. Chris at 26 to Zayne's 36, a deficit of 10 life here. I believe I see a Gargaining Tome in his hand. Normally a fantastic card in this deck.
Perfect opener, yeah.
1/2 of your Embodiment of Lightning. It gets you another card, but it's not as good when it costs 3. And it looks like that is exactly what it's going to be. Pitching those 3 red cards.
Your Gorg Tome.
Get rid of those Frostbites. He's going to pitch.
And that's all you can really do.
Arsenal.
Yep. That is exactly I think what he had to do, because he couldn't keep the same cards. He wants to dig for some new cards that could possibly get through more Frostbites. Yep. The hard part now is this is him stop being aggressive. This is the first turn you haven't seen him play an attack action to swing at Zayne. So now Zayne has all the priority to push ahead in damage.
And he has that Codex, which is going to allow him to grab an attack action if he wishes. If he doesn't, that second Arsenal zone is turned off. So without another attack action card, there's only going to be a couple arrows if he wants to keep sandbagging it there. Critically, Chris also, by arsenaling the card that he drew, turns that Codex, the discard effect, off for himself. He's not going to have to put in a card in. He's not going to have to discard a card. So that Codex is just going to represent the Frailty and then the draw if Zayne elects to use it. But first he's going to come in with that Heat Seeker coming in from Arsenal after pitching to Voltaire. This is going to have go again, the on hit here, allowing Zayne to put a card from the top of his deck into his arsenal at the end of the turn.
Super great card. Lexi's love this card. Azalea's love this card. Definitely one of their power cards and a great buff that they got. So 5 damage is starting to feel like a lot when you're almost below 20. Chris not having an embodiment makes it hard.
And I did take a little peek at the hand, and it looked as though Chris has a Channel Mount Heroic. I think I might have even seen a Force of Nature in there, so we'll see if he wants to try to make this next attack as powerful as possible. But
Rain
critically,
Razor
yeah.
was insane here. Rain Razor's gonna make this turn very explosive. Bolton shot, Codex of Frailty and Arsenal. We're seeing the writing on the wall here. Chris is about to take a lot of damage. 7 first, no blocks. Now 7 again with go again on hit reload, but Zayne doesn't have it in hand, so just the damage alone.
Yeah, but that Codex is going to allow this turn to continue with the Rain Razor's buff. I mean, you see why Zayne was electing to hold on to it. He was still able, with that Arctic Incarceration, to put pressure on Chris's resources here, and this is going to allow for an enormous amount of damage, for as well as, I mean, Codex. We don't need to talk about Codex. Codex is going to get him a card to continue this Rain Razor's turn with. It's going to get him an Arsenal for his next turn, and it's going to make Chris's, if any attack comes from the Arsenal or that Rosetta Thorn comes in, that's going to come in for 1 less damage. So it's, I mean, on a Rain Razor's turn with a Bolton shot and a Heat Seeker, he's gonna have 2 cards in his arsenal at the end of this turn.
Yep. That's Zayne playing very beautifully, very careful. We see he could have put the Codex out earlier. He could have tried and force something, but he was waiting for this turn to line up.
Yeah.
And this is a beautiful turn, if you ask me. Yeah. The pressure that's put on here, Chris not having an embodiment. Oh man, this is definitely a hard decision. Sometimes you, like I said, as Briar, you have to block in certain situations, but you don't want to because you want to be aggressive. This is not feeling great. What cards do you want to give up? They're most of them block for 2, maybe a couple block for 3.
We've seen him use some 3 blocks earlier in this game, but they were much more effective when that embodiment of Earth was on the field.
Yep.
So it'll be, you know,
Chris says,
it's
"I'll
tough.
take it."
Yeah, I think if he has those the 2 cards, if he has the Force of Nature, if he has the Channel Mount Heroic, he's going to be able to push a lot of damage, but he's going to be taking an enormous amount as well.
Playing the Codex. Let's see what arrow he fetches.
Yeah. So we've seen some drill shots be blocked with, I believe, and be attacked with. We've seen the endless arrows as well. Now, critically, the Heat Seeker is only going to be online if Chris has, or if Zayne has an open arsenal zone. So I don't think there's any way for him to get that card into his arsenal face up that he draws off the ponder. So probably,
no, I don't think there is at all.
Yeah, so that
might have it face. It would be face down.
So that Heat Seeker trigger might not be able to continue the turn from here. But let's see, he's just going to come in with the Searing Shot.
Nice, beautiful, just pushing that damage.
Yeah, another 0 for 7, going to put Chris down to 5, and he's just going to have to take it. He's already taken so much here.
Yeah.
At this point.
At this point, why not? Having the Ponder token go. Chris pointing out something about Heat Seeker. Gets Ponder token. So I think the issue here, Chris was saying, oh, you have a Ponder token, you have to resolve it first. But from my understanding how the rules work, you get to resolve your layers first. So if you had like a Blood Rod, Inertia, and something, you resolve which one at a time.
Yeah.
So Zayne resolved the Ponder first, drew the card, and then did the Heat Seeker, I'm pretty sure, and put the Heat Seeker up, and then kept the card in hand.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the lots of new plays with these codexes.
Yeah. So here's the Tome of Harvests. This is going to draw him 3 more cards. He's already gotten half of a way to an Embodiment of Lightning. I do see a Channel Mount Heroic. I'm not sure. I might have thought that the Tome was a Force of Nature, so he might not have the Force here. But at Chris Iaali at 5 to Zayne Johnson's 36. So there is an enormous mountain for him to climb. And let's see how he wants to get started.
Nimblism is good. That's going to push big damage and get you that embodiment.
So Embodiment of Lightning created is going to give his next attack go again.
A little Coax of Commotion, a great little generic Majestic. If it hits, then Chris can choose to pick 3 options. Each player gets to heal 1, each player gets to make a Quicken token, or each player gets to draw 1. But that's only if it hits. It's on hit. He does not have to declare the modes beforehand, like E-Strike. And it's always an interesting one because it kind of confuses people because it happens to them too. It's kind of like one of those "this round's on me" cards. That's just like it feels good for everybody, but can also push you past damage that you need. So it's gonna hit. Zayne says, "Okay, what modes do you choose?" Chris is gonna think.
And critically, that Quicken token can be well used by
100%.
Zayne here. If he does decide to get both these players Quicken tokens, that Bolton shot then is able to just come in for free.
Yep.
That's basically like a whole nother card that he just gets to play without having to worry about pumping it, giving it go again. He might be able to use both of those arsenal zones on his turn. So Chris having to weigh those decisions.
Quicken token does come down. Everyone gets 1 health. I think it's smart. Chris needs the health, and it's a big mountain already, so why not? 1 extra
Looks
health.
like both players are going to draw a card here.
Yeah. And draw a card. So all modes for Cokes. The biggest Cokes was made in a commotion somewhere in some bar.
That Cokes had go again. It came in for 3 more. Yeah, that was a massive commotion.
Yep. Still has a frailty token. CNC coming down from hand with the Quicken token. CNC, one of those big cards against Rangers to find to swing tempo.
That's pretty sick. With the go again, his turn's going to continue. He pitched the Channel Mount Heroic here, allowing him to come in for this big old Command and Conquer. Zayne acting like he's just going to take it, and it looks like he does. We're going to lose the Bolton shot.
All right, no problem.
Chris's turn is going to continue from here.
Chris, massive damage turn. We're at 13 damage that he's brought it back. 24, slightly bringing it back. Let's see what else he's got in his hand. 1 big card. A Rabble. Revealing a yellow, so it's going to be a 3 Rabble, but better than a blue.
Zayne going to most likely just elect to take it, go down to 21.
Good vanilla damage. And if this was old Briar, Chris would have had 3 embodiments right now. But new Briar is fair and balanced. So just 1 embodiment and then Rosetta Swing. It's going to be 2 and 1 because of the frailty token from the Codex. So Codex is putting in that work. Big chain. Now it's 6-18 in 1 turn. He was at 36, 30-something before, right? Chris putting up big damage to Briar, showing why she's still relevant. If he would have found a CMH somewhere in that mix, too, it could have got crazy.
Now, does Pulse of Candlehold, does that block?
It does block. It blocks 3.
It does block, all right.
It's a yellow blocks 3. It fuses things, and then if you haven't bought it, it blocks 4.
I was going to say, if he has a no block here, you see Blake in the background with a... and then so he's going to be able to come in for 5 here with the Quicken token.
So there's the 4 block plus the grass, so that's 5. Rain Razors on the top. Second one seen by Zayne. Perfect timing.
Pop it right back into hand. He only has 1 more Voltaire activation, but the bullseye bracers here representing a 3rd arrow that could come down if that bow is used twice. So let's see. He's going to activate it a 2nd time.
I think Chris is in the range. I think Zayne's going to try and go for it here. Let's see what he has. Hopefully more arrows.
He still has his Snapdragon Scalers up for that Endless Arrow. This is a Heat Seeker for 7. Chris is at 4, so a 3 block here won't cover it all up. Most likely going to be seeing some equipment blocks here. He saved his Crown of Providence. He saved that 2nd block on the Grasp. He has his Tunic that he just used on the last turn. But it is looking dire for the LA man.
It is very dire.
You and your San Diego crew are looking to be in the driver's seat here.
Oh, yeah. San Diego came up big this time around. Lots of people representing from different regions in California. Every time we have an event, it seems more and more people come out of the woodwork to come play.
And the bullseye bracers here is going to put the Bolton shot in with go again. The reload on hit. There isn't enough block to cover it up, and that is going to be the end of the game. Chris Iaali going ahead and taking it over Mr. Zayne Johnson.
Look how happy Zayne is. Chris and Zayne, I know, are good friends. They're laughing the whole time. It was a fun game, but just a rough matchup to play against as a Briar. And Chris did his best. He got those big swings in, but wasn't enough to beat that ice, and disease tokens are coming down. Just everything from Lexi.
Yeah, absolutely. A little hello from one of our producers in the back, Ryan. But that was a good game. We got to see some kind of classic heroes from some metas of yore, one might say.
Yeah, kind of like the start of your Well, you started like a little bit before.
I started in right at the release of Tales. So.
Yeah, so that
so those heroes are. I know those heroes,
yeah,
man. Those are the
exactly.
Blitz decks I learned with. But it's interesting. We didn't see an enormous amount of ice from Zayne there on Lexi, but the ice that was played was unbelievably impactful. Those 2 red Arctic Incarcerations just ripped Chris's turns apart.
I hate that card. It's so hard because it's 3 Frostbites for 0, and Zayne was playing them beautifully exactly, and he would. 1 chain,
first
2
turn
chain,
of the game,
and
or the end of the chain.
Yeah, it's true. First turn of the game was an insane.
Yeah.
Here's your slap back on that first turn. So Zayne just drawing really great, being patient. Those were 2 Rain Razors. Chris Iaali not seeing any CMHs in any of his power turns. He did see CNCs, which are good, and those did kind of help, but they weren't enough to close that damage lead that that Zayne developed, and well, it's hopefully I can see Chris make it up through the bottom bracket and go
All right, all right, all right. Our boy has done plenty. We believe in him.
We do.
We believe in him. But that was a great game, well played by both parties. We're going to head into just a very, very short break, and then we will be having Zayne on here for an interview, talk about the game, hear about his deck choice and his meta predictions, and talk to him about Pro Tour.
Yeah,
so
that's
we'll
gonna be
be back
exciting.
shortly. Don't go anywhere.
Bye. How's it going, guys? Welcome back. I have Zayne Johnson as for the last game. Lexi. Why bring Lexi today?
You know, just showing the real most powerful weapon in Tales of Aria.
Voltaire, you're one of 2 Lexis here.
I am one of 2 Lexis. I think that's crazy. But
You think that's crazy? You think you're going to see more Lexis at Pro Tour?
yes.
You-
More than 2, yeah.
Oh, yeah, more than 2 for sure. It's definitely did great last game. You got the turn 1 in the IC.
Arctic Incarceration.
Yeah, there you go.
Doing its job.
Doing its job. We have your list in front of you.
Yep.
Are you comfortable to talk about anything in your list? You want to
Sure.
keep it a little secret for Pro Tour?
No, we can talk about it.
Okay. So you have a Codex of Blood Rot, which is a new one, at least for me, I haven't seen at
Yep.
all. Why Codex of Blood Rot?
Well, when you have 2 Voltaire activations, it's kind of nice to have your third.
The third one, okay.
And I like to Arsenal Codex of Frailty, and then Codex of Blood Rot lets me play it, get the card from my hand out, Codex of Frailty with an empty hand, and just be a little more efficient with my Arsenal management.
Okay.
It also helps, just does 2 damage, and it's kind of like Take Aim, where Take Aim's +3 and reload. Blood Rot is basically 2 damage, reload, and a ponder. All the codexes are strong, but we're kind of just trying it out. I'm running 2.
What's your favorite Codex? What's your favorite Codex personally? Just out of all 3.
Art or effect?
Mixture of both. Just the one that you like.
The Marvel Blood Rot is my favorite,
Yep.
but it's got to be Frailty.
Frailty. Yeah, Frailty is so strong. Running 3 of Frailty, running 2 Blood Rot. I think that's appropriate. No Inertia.
It was in the list 2 days ago. We're just trying it out.
Yeah, of course. This is what AG is for. Just seeing more Rangers use a mix of these new codexes is very interesting to me because I know before it was just Frailty, but now it seems the field has widened for you.
Yeah, I mean, that Ponder token's obviously great. The deck's built to use mostly anything in Arsenal. Sometimes it can be awkward if you don't have enough go again and you like double Arsenal and the Ponder's not useful, but yeah, Codex is good.
Nice. So definitely experimenting with more codexes, I think, for anybody out there playing Ranger is obviously the go-to. Don't get out of just Frailty because Frailty is good, but so are the other ones.
Totally.
Let's see. We got 2 Command and Conquers. Nice. You got hit with 2 Command and Conquers. How did those feel last game? I remember about that because I think they kind of hit you at the right time to where it's preventing that setup.
I thankfully had 3 arrows in hand both times, so I could block the CNC and still have a relevant turn.
Nice.
Sometimes you just eat the CNC now, especially like when you get the Ponder draw, you get like a blue arrow. It's obviously nice to have. If they CNC you, so be it. You lose your 2 damage or 3 damage or whatever. It's definitely still effective against Lexi, of course. It's in the deck for the mirror and for Azalea primarily, but it's a good card.
Last one, which is a new buff I like pointing out, is Falcon Wing. I always recommend to people on the stream, run Falcon Wing. It was kind of slept on the preview season a little bit, and as people started playing with it, they realized it's just an arrow with go again, and that's great, especially when you rain razors it.
Exactly. It's a 0 for 3. That's sometimes 4. That's sometimes 5. That's sometimes 6. With so it's just it's like the best thing to hit off Ponder.
Nice.
It's just a value card, especially when you have that second Arsenal and you play Frailty. You just get the Falcon Wing, and it's 3 or 5, and then shoot your last card.
Nice. This list was beautiful. I think you played great.
Thanks.
What were you thinking going in playing against Chris Iaali, world finalists on Briar?
Yeah, well, Chris is a good guy. We've played a couple times off stream. I had never beat him in a real tournament, so it's good to get a win. There's definitely the name recognition with Chris, but I saw he was on Briar, and so I knew that I wasn't doomed.
Yeah. No, definitely. I was explaining to stream that's not always the best matchup for Briar because of the Arctics and the Frostbites, and you had that turn 1. It's that turn 1 that prevented him from slapping back real hard, and I think really put the brakes on for him.
Yeah, he had quad red the first Arctic, and then he had worse than quad red the second one because he had the Gorg Tome.
Yep. It seemed like you guys were having fun, laughing, a great game. definitely go back and watch some of those. I think you'll really enjoy Chris's reactions that we zoomed in on when you played those those Arctics.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about yourself as a player. You're going to Pro Tour, correct?
I am.
How long have you been playing Fab?
I started right before Monarch. I just bought like bulk decks that were basically commons and a couple rares. Played like Rhinar versus Dory, Rhinar versus Bravo. I had a lot of fun, and then Monarch came out right around that time, and so I got into Chain, played some aggro, really like Viscerai and the whole Runeblade style. But then once Tales of Aria came out, I really liked playing Lexi, and so I kind of just bounced between those two as my main two heroes.
Another fun fact, I always remind people, this is your first card game, right?
That's true.
It's amazing. Welcome. I'm glad it could be Flesh and Blood as the first card game.
Yeah, no magic, so people always make magic comparisons, and I'm like, totally.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's amazing. How do you feel going into Pro Tour versus the damage build Lexi versus the Fuse Lexi?
Ice and versus Fuseless kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Ice Lexi still has a place. I think things like Insidious Chill and the Fuse Arrows really help you get over the top. Cards like Icequake and Winter's Bites really help push through damage. The Fuseless is interesting. It's just so efficient, and the Ice deck can run into friction with codexes, right? Because you need cards in hand to fuse, and then sometimes you can't utilize that Ice card efficiently, and then like you either have to awkwardly pitch it or to codex. And it's also just 3 to 9 more cards that you want to run that don't say Ice or Arrow on them.
Yeah.
So it's a delicate balance. I think there's still room for Ice. I wouldn't be surprised if Ice shows up and does well. I might play around with Ice a little bit more, but Fuseless is fun. You kind of get to do a Briar impersonation.
Just a little mini CMH or just one less CMH.
Rain Razors is basically CMH, and Three of a Kind is basically Force of Nature.
Well, that definitely seems to, I think, be on every Lexi's mind right now as they're preparing for that Pro Tour is that balance, as you said, between Fuse and the codexes, because the codexes are so strong.
They are,
but so are Frostbites.
They are. And codex, you can tunnel vision on codex a little bit. Like it's yellow. You should be pitching it a decent amount of the time that you see it. But yeah, it's another tool. Shout out to the devs for giving Ranger a tool to play small hands. It feels good.
How do you feel about Outsiders as a set? Because as you being a Ranger lover,
it's the best.
It's the best.
I love it.
Christmas.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's the draft format's really fun. It's engaging. You have options deep into the packs. All three heroes or all three classes can succeed if they are drafted properly. And yeah, I think the CC editions from Outsiders are great. I think the draft edition or the draft format is more forgiving and more fun for that reason. Uprising could feel a little constricting, and you don't pivot on one pick, and then you realize that was wrong, but it's too late because it's just, I don't know. You have a little more freedom in this format, and that's a good thing.
Should we be afraid of Riptide? Should I be afraid?
In draft?
Okay, all right. That's good to know. Is there anything else you want to identify on your list that you think would be good for players to know as they prepare to bring their Ranger into Pro Tour? Just that balance?
Yeah, I think just finding the balance of you really want to draw. You need 2 arrows in every hand. And when you run this many arrows with the Fuseless, you just block better. So you're a little more insulated to CNC. And sometimes that's kind of all you need. Like, with Ice, you'd have 2 arrows and 2 Ice cards, and then you can't block a CNC because the Ice cards don't block 3.
Yep. So make sure to get your reps in. Make sure to get your balance in. Zayne, thank you again for doing the interview. Thank you for coming up from San Diego and repping our region for sure. We got a lot of skilled players, and not just LA players. We got northern players. We got people from Arizona. We got people from Vegas to come out, and I'm excited to see more of your run.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man. All right, guys. We'll be right back with the next game. Stay tuned.